Tales of a Toxic Teacher: Exposing the Cycles of Abuse Within Our Schools by Angela Harders. Dedicated to my students, each of you have taught me far more than I could ever have taught you. Reviews. Tales of a Toxic Teacher explores the many painful and abusive relationships teachers and students have with each other and with the public education system. It is an honest account of how the public education system stifles the innate creativity and curiosity of our children over the course of their time in the system. If we are truly committed to change the current paradigm of public education, a first step would be to read this book to understand the dynamics that must be eradicated. Angela accurately describes each, offering personal examples for a view into your local public school. This book is fantastic. Brenda M. Diaz, teacher and educator, and founder of the Red Lipstick Rebellion. We each want to believe that what we do, and especially what we get paid to do, is worthwhile and useful, and that our efforts are making the world a better place. In her book, Tales of a Toxic Teacher, former teacher Angela Harders shows the courage and honesty necessary to objectively reconsider and re-examine what she, as a part of the American education system, has actually contributed to society. Her conclusions do not paint a pretty picture, but it is a picture which we all need to take a long and careful look at if we ever hope to ever move the world from the way things are to the way things should be. Larkin Rose, voluntarist and author of The Most Dangerous Superstition. Angela Harders has taken a brave and bold move in writing this book, providing a fly-on-the-wall insight into what really happens in schools in some of the richest countries in the world. She has vulnerably and honestly shared her own misgivings, toxic behaviors, and classroom experiences, which so many teachers and former teachers, myself included, can relate to, highlighting how both teachers and students alike become pawns in the toxic environment that permeates our schools. A radical new approach is needed for education, but for this to happen and to be successful, not just rhetoric, we must first have an honest look at what is not working and why this is. This book is a much-needed first step to unraveling a thorny and hugely important issue, which will have ripple effects for decades to come. I highly recommend this book. Claire Ford, expert education coach, founder and CEO of Switched On Academy. Introduction. I am a toxic teacher. I promise I didn't start out this way. The truth is, no teacher ever does. But eventually we all become one, and most of the time we never even notice. Teachers do not join the profession to become famous or to make a lot of money. Every single teacher that I have ever known has made the choice to become a teacher because they love children and they want to make a difference in the world by making a difference in the life of a child, or perhaps thousands of children. So how do things go so wrong? How does a teacher start a career with the best of intentions to help children and then end up hurting them instead? What is the antidote for a toxic teacher? Before we dive into the answers to those questions, I wanted to introduce myself to you. My name is Angela Harders. I grew up attending a small private Christian school in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. I had just 31 students in my whole grade, and most of us had been together from pre-kindergarten through 8th grade. We not only attended school together during the day, but we also played sports on the same teams after school and on the weekends. And most of us attended the same church with most of our teachers. School had become an extension of family. And while I did experience some of the usual school problems like bullying or gossip, overall I would say my experience in school was a positive one. I loved my teachers. I loved my friends. I loved learning new things. I loved getting good grades. I loved playing at recess. I loved going on field trips. I loved school. Or at least that's what I thought. Compared to the other schools in my area, my classmates and I lived relatively sheltered lives. We did not worry about skipping class or sneaking around. We did not worry about fights in the hallway or weapons being brought to school. We did not worry about drugs or alcohol. We all really tried to be good kids. Even as an 8th grader, I gasped when I heard a student say, "Shut up," to another student. The worst 4-letter word that I knew was crap or jerk, so you can imagine my complete culture shock when my parents transferred me to our local public school, one of the largest in the state for 9th grade. While I struggled to fit in socially with the 2,000 other students, I managed to excel in school and in sports. I was known as a teacher's pet, made honor roll every semester, took all AP and honors classes, was the starting pitcher for our school softball team, got an internship at a local elementary school, won several academic and community service awards, and earned multiple scholarships to college. After high school, I attended Liberty University, the largest Christian university in the world. I worked overtime to graduate with 2 bachelor's degrees, one in Spanish and one in teaching English as a second language, in just 2.5 years. I graduated with honors and began to prepare for the next season of my life, more school. You see, I loved school, and I was good at it. I also loved children. I had spent every summer since 8th grade volunteering in an orphanage in Guatemala, and I knew since then that I wanted to be a teacher and work with kids for the rest of my life. I truly believed that making a difference in the life of a child is the greatest way to make a difference in the world. I could not imagine investing my time or energy in any lesser endeavor. So shortly before graduation from college, I applied for an alternative teacher certification program, similar to Teach for America. Alternative teacher certification programs are highly competitive programs in which an outside entity extensively interviews and intensively trains people that have demonstrated natural teaching ability, and then sends them to work in a Title I school in exchange for earning their teacher certification. After several weeks of interviews, writing multiple essays, and performing a mock lesson in front of judges, I was pleasantly surprised to learn that I was chosen, out of almost 5,000 applicants, to be one of 10 teachers that was accepted to the Alternative Teacher Certification Program. The Monday after my college graduation, I began a 2-month-long intensive training on education theory, pedagogy, lesson planning, formative and summative assessments, scaffolding, small groups, interventions, and more. I spent over 12 hours a day researching and preparing to step foot into my very own classroom, but there would never be enough hours in the day or days in the year to fully prepare me for that first day of school. I was hired to teach Spanish 1 at a Title I school in Prince George's County. On my first day, my supervisor handed me an eraser with no chalk and a stapler with no staples and said, "Good luck." She walked me to my classroom, handed me the key, and left. The classroom walls were cinder blocks painted a dull white. There were no windows. The thermostat read 87 degrees. This empty, hot room would be my home for the next year, and I had only a few days to get it ready. I drove to a nearby teacher store and spent a few $100s on inspirational posters, markers, fancy pens, flags for all the Spanish-speaking countries, Red Hot Chili Pepper borders for the bulletin board, stickers, and more. By the end of the day, my empty classroom was starting to look and feel more like home. I was going to be the best teacher that these kids had ever had. On the first day of school, I stood at the front of my classroom with palms drenched in sweat and a grin from ear to ear. I had been warned repeatedly by veteran teachers, "Don't smile until Christmas." But I just couldn't help myself. I was so excited and so nervous. I had waited and prepared so long for this day, and it was finally here. I was a real teacher, about to welcome my real students for the very first time. The bell rang and a flood of high school students poured into my classroom. I noticed right away that there was a big problem. I had 30 desks, but my class roster showed 42 students. One student decided that he would take a seat and hang his feet on the desk in front of him. I approached him by saying, "Good morning. Can you please move your feet so that someone else can sit here?" To my utter shock, he stood up, towering over me, put his finger in my face and screamed, "Bitch, who the fuck do you think you are telling me what to do? I'll sit wherever the fuck I want." "I'm your teacher," I replied, praying that my voice wouldn't crack. "Man, fuck this class and fuck you." He picked up the desk, threw it at me, and walked out of class. I never saw him again until graduation day, when I watched in complete confusion as he walked across the stage and the principal handed him a diploma. "Hey, how did he graduate? He needed to pass Spanish, but he never attended my class," I whispered to my coworker sitting beside me. She shook her head. "Don't ask questions. Do you really want them to fail him and have him be our problem for one more year? Sometimes it's better to just let them through so then they can be society's problem and not ours." After the graduation ended, I went back to the school and logged onto our online gradebook. I held the printed copy of the grades that I had submitted for him, 0% for all 4 quarters. But the computer was showing something very different. Someone had given him 60% for all 4 quarters. He passed my class without ever attending, and he wasn't the only one. He may have passed my class, but we had surely failed him, and others like him. From the first 5 minutes of my first year teaching, I feared that something was deeply wrong. But by the last 5 minutes of my first year teaching, I knew, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that something was indeed deeply wrong, and I was a part of the problem. So many things had transpired that first year and in the following years that made me become a toxic teacher. Many of the stories that you will read in this book are mine, but I will also be sharing stories from other teachers and students in order to protect the people and places involved. Names will be changed, but the truth of our story will not. You see, everyone knows that there is a problem with the educational system today, but we cannot address a problem as long as we refuse to be honest about it. After all, the first step to recovery is admitting that you have a problem. While it may be easy and tempting as a teacher to blame the number of other potential causes of problems in the public school, lack of resources, lack of parental support, lack of administrative support, lack of funding, lack of student motivation, lack of teacher training, I know that it is not helpful for me to address problems that I have no control over. But one thing that I can control is myself. I had become a part of the problem, so I had to become a part of the solution. And you can too. So whether you're a toxic teacher like me, a parent, a student, or just someone who cares about children, please know that you are not alone, and there is hope. We can solve the problems we cause. We can, we will, we must.